two-seater. She hopped in, drunk smile, said it's good to see you. What you thinking about skipping downtown tonight? Race the coupe back home, grab the four-wheel drive, kick a dirt rock road up to a tree line. Stop and look at her and say, ready? Better hold on tight. Let me show you my countryside through these old headlights. We can take this road as far as you want to go. I'll show you how a country mile can take us all night. Feeling high in a bull's tail up an old dirt road. I ain't gonna run or hide. We can let the fire burn wild. That's just my countryside. We post up on the bank, drop a tailgate, windows down in the cab, pumping George Strait. We paid a couple lines and we flow them on out. Red Bible ripple bouncing on a cool night. Fire dancing, making shadows in the moonlight. She leaves in close in the bed of my truck. Now still, let me show you my countryside through these old headlights. We can take this road as far as you want to go. I'll show you how a country mile can take us all night. Feeling high in a bull's tail up an old dirt road. I ain't gonna run or hide. We can let the fire burn wild. That's just my countryside. Let me show you my countryside through these old headlights. We can take this road as far as you want to go. I'll show you how a country mile can take us all night. Feeling high in a bull's tail up an old dirt road. I ain't gonna run or hide. We can let the fire burn wild. My countryside. And there ain't nothing like my countryside.
Hey, welcome to Maintain Fishing Live with me and Mike. Welcome everyone. What's up?
You got
Mike?
it right this time. You didn't stutter with the name. You're getting
Hey,
better.
I'm knocking it off. Maybe them 6 Coors Lights I had, but after I came home from work was good.
Dude, it's funny because now that I've started my own podcast too, I'm gonna have to like switch back and forth names too, so it's gonna be funny.
We just want to remind everybody, whoever's using the Facebook side, go to allow Facebook at StreamYard.com/Facebook to allow your picture and your comments to show up. Your comments will show up, but your picture won't, so we don't know who we're talking to. So just make sure we got a new stream going over on Twitch, Mike. So we've got
we're streaming on Twitch now too.
Yeah,
huh?
we're streaming on Twitch as well.
Hitting the fancy side. I'm actually just starting. I completely honestly forgot to put my stream on here, so we're getting mine live here too.
Yeah. So we're casting over on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.
Man.
And so tonight's show is actually going to be forward-facing sonar.
The topic that has consumed America lately, dude.
Yes, and has gone in the Bass Pro world as: are we going to ban it or are we going to allow it? So, if y'all got any questions or comments about the forward-facing sonar ups and downs and things like that, just post it in the comments and we'll get to them tonight.
So I expect some sort of fist fight at some point. I expect some rowdiness and for those of you who aren't familiar, just so if you're not familiar with how the technology works, I'm going to give you a quick rundown because I did some Googling. So basically, you think of your regular fishing sonar, right? That sends a signal, and when it returns off the bottom and comes back up, the transducer translates that and tells you what the signal bounced off of. I'm going to give this a super layman version. The way forward-facing sonar works is it's actually doing a different frequency, and it's doing it so fast that it's an almost real-time image, and it's going, as the name implies, forward. So what it does is it gives you a real-time view of what's going on in front of your boat. So basically, you can literally see your bait fall. You can see the fish swimming. You can see whatever's in the water actually moving, unlike traditional sonar, where it is a kind of a delayed view. It's a little bit, most people put their transducers in the back of their boat. So by the time you see the image, you've already gone over whatever it's displaying. So that's just to give you guys an understanding, just in case you don't understand or not familiar with the tech.
Yeah. So one of the questions I was watching a lot of the bigger YouTubers doing all this and all the podcasts and video casts, whatever you want to call them, doing all this is when you're watching the elites or MLF, you're constantly watching the backside of a fisherman. Look down at a video screen.
I think what they should do is they should get their sponsors tattooed on the back of their neck. You can see them in the whole game.
Yeah, you might as well just get them tattooed on the back of you, wear shorts and put them across the back of your shorts and everything. Yeah. But, back in the day when I was growing up and watching Bassmasters on television before ESPN came out and all that was, they had these camera boats and they would get in front of the fishermen and you would see this fisherman actually fishing and catching fish. But now all you see is, they're in the back of the boat looking at the backside of the fishermen. Don't ever see hardly no faces.
Now, to be fair, one thing that I did hear brought up in a video I watched in a live stream is there was a little bit of staring at a screen back when down imaging and side scan came to be a thing, but there also wasn't live streaming at the time. So you weren't watching professional anglers watching the screen. They were only really cutting the video. So when you were watching it, it wasn't live. There was a boat following guys around, and when they caught a fish, they cut to the part where the guy hooked the fish.
Yeah.
And then he held it up for the camera boat, and then they cut to the next guy. So you didn't see a lot of it. But I will say, I don't watch a lot of professional bass fishing, but I will tell you, I caught a couple MLF events this year, or Bass Pro Tour, or whatever the name is now. And I'm sure I'm going to piss off everybody that I named this wrong, but I watched, it was one of I think it was a St. Lawrence event where it was like, dude, you literally the entire day, the guy is just like, I honestly, I can't, as a consumer of the media, I can't get excited about it. It just doesn't to me, it's not entertaining. And the good point that Mr. Alex Rudd and some of the stuff that came up in a live stream last night that I watched is you got to think about the fact that bass is a business.
That's right.
So they need people to enjoy watching the elites. They need people to enjoy watching the opens. So if you're bored and you click off of that video and they're not getting their ratings, they're not going to get their sponsors.
No.
They're not going to be able to make their money.
And talking about sponsors, all these guys are sponsored by Humminbird, Lowrance, Garmin. You see 2 12-inches at the console. You go up to the trolling motor and you see another three 12-inch screens up there. And
I'm surprised. I'm surprised I haven't seen somebody with like a 32-inch flat screen up there at this point. Like,
oh yeah, sir.
Or insane.
It's crazy that they're driving this boat at 72 miles an hour across some water.
Yep.
These big lakes, got 2 big screens in front of you, and they're running strictly by I call it dark out
Yep.
mode.
Yep.
You know, because they're running by the channel markers on the, they're not looking over the steering, the steering column.
Well, if you notice too, a lot of elites, like, and this isn't necessarily just forward-facing sonar, but if you notice, a lot of elites have deleted the windshield.
Yeah.
They don't have a windshield in their boat. It's graphs.
Yeah.
It's usually 3 graphs replacing the windshield in their console.
That's right.
And they're not like, we're not talking 5-inch monitors. You're talking 17-inch monitors. Like, these things are like computer monitors in front of them. Like,
yeah, it's almost like a sim rad for a deep sea vessel.
so I'm curious though, like, what is your opinion on should they ban it in tournament fishing? Because honestly,
does it give an edge to the angler? Sure, it does. It if you know how to properly work it.
Right.
And somebody Bear Fishing just said it it said John B released a video, and you can actually see the jerk bait, see the fish come up and get the bait.
Yep.
I fished with it on my uncle's boat before, this past year, up on Clark's Hill.
Yep.
And we were marking fish, and you could actually see the fish, the school of fish. We're dropping drop shots down to them, and you were just looking at them, and you could see the fish where the bait was swiggling at. You could see the fish come up and nudge the bait and go back down.
Well, Gambler makes a what do they call it? Hover rig bait. So they're starting to make, the bait manufacturers are starting to make plastics that react to the sonar better, so you can see them better. Like, it's already influenced the bait industry, where they're making jerk baits, they're making certain types of suspending baits from a different polymer of plastic that reacts to the ping, so that it actually glows brighter on.
Right. Yeah.
So, and the thing that the advantage, and here's my opinion of it from the level of me being just a low-end kayak angler. I'm in a local grassroots kayak trail. I fish against guys with live scope. The top 5 guys in my tournament trail have live scope. I've beaten the top 5 guys in my tournament trail on their home lakes, on a lake I've never fished before, while they're using live scope. So does it make you an elite, unbeatable fisherman because you have that technology in your boat?
No, not really.
But what it does do is, on a day where those fish are suspended, you're going to find those fish faster than I am, because I can barely read 2D, let alone forward facing. So if you're good with that forward facing, you're probably going to be able to find those schools of fish. You're going to be able to find even bait quicker than I am. So in my opinion, and the reason why I wanted to put my opinion out is, personally, if you have a personal boat that you're fun fishing in, buy what you can afford and use what you can afford.
Right.
I could care less whether you use it or not. I don't think there's a moral reason not to use it. I don't think there's an ethical reason not to use it, because they said the same thing about side scan. They said the same thing about down imaging.
Yep.
At the end of the day, we're tinkerers by nature. If you're a fisherman, you've made a rig that makes absolutely no sense to any other person, and you've tried it because you want to do something that's a little bit different than somebody else. We're always trying to find that next evolution. But what I think is that at low-level tournaments, it should be considered to be banned only because somebody that wants to just get into tournament fishing, somebody who may be excited about the sport, can't afford it. Right. So that person, by default, is at a disadvantage against the guy who's willing to spend or can spend that much money. So like at the pro level, not even talking grassroots trails, like the opens, for example, right? They basically made it so you have to win the entire season in the opens to qualify for the elites.
Yep.
Right? These are the guys that we're going to be watching in the elites in the future. These are the next generation. It's the next man up. As a fun fisherman and YouTube content creator, The one thing that the professionals benefit me of is Berkeley or Pure Fishing and Guggen and Strike King. Guess what? They're spending R&D dollars because they make enough money because pro fishing exists so that they can make baits that I'm going to eventually use.
Right.
If they're not making their money, they're going to stop making their baits. I'm going to stop getting, inexpensive baits. It'll be harder to get new innovation. And that all comes down to those guys at that level. If they all aren't sponsored by Lowrance, they're not sponsored by Humminbird, they're already spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to travel their boats around the country and do these tournaments and pay the entry fees to do the opens. So the guy with a deeper wallet is going to be able to run something like forward-facing sonar, whereas the guy that can't afford it might be the next Gerald Swindle. He might be the next Jacob Wheeler, but you'll never know because he couldn't use the advantages because he didn't have sponsors.
Yeah, that's,
Elites, let them have it because as far as I'm concerned, none of them are paying for it.
Yeah.
There ain't no way anybody in the elites is paying for their electronics.
No, it's all sponsorship, and you see these guys pick up these boats from all these marinas that do nothing but bass boats, and they do a walkthrough of their boat, and then you're like, holy cow, that boat costs $200,000. A regular Joe Blow everyday worker can't afford a $2,000 boat. That's a house payment.
Dude, some of these boats.
And going back to kayak fishing, if I was fishing for money, like on the national level of kayak, like Hobie BOS, you're getting all these people up here like Christine Fisher, Drew Gregory, all these guys, all these women and men fishing these higher level kayak tournaments, they're sponsored.
The kayak company, by the electronics company, battery company,
or these local people that have kayak shops and put all these kayaks together. They're sponsoring these higher end fishermen that are fishing these national levels because it's more exposure for their shop.
Yep.
And like me, I work a job for a living. And how can I adjust my income to go pay $6,000 for a unit to put on a kayak when I'm not fishing for $20,000 or $30,000?
See, that's the thing, and that's the thing that honestly baffles me is so, like, for example, my tournament Saturday, right? $50 buy-in, 14 anglers. Okay, so we placed 3. $500, $400 for first place. Like, it's 2 hours away. I'm spending $50 in gas to get there,
right?
$50 to enter the tournament, right? So I'm not even gonna make, like, literally my net tournament income this year is about -$400 between entry fees and gas. And I'm using a kayak. I'm not even using a bass boat that burns $5 a minute worth of gas going from one side of the lake to the other. I'm not using a 250 show. I'm using my legs. So these guys that are trying to compete, dude, they already have so much money invested. And that's the thing is, the forward-facing sonar stuff isn't going to go down in price for a long time either because it's so new. So it's going to be something that's not going to be mainstream for a long time. And in my opinion, like I said, the way I always looked at it was let the guys in the opens limit it. Like, honestly, I saw a comment earlier, and that actually makes sense. Limit the screens.
Yeah, I had it marked right up here.
So, if you do limit the screens, that's how you control it. Because if you want to use forward facing, that's fine, but that's all you're going to use. You're not going to know how deep you are. You're not going to know what your water temp is, and you're going to be able to control it a little bit. The problem you're going to have is these guys that fish the opens, some of those guys are fishing MLF, the opens, the local, they used to be Redmans. I don't even know what they are. Like the local, old boy trails, the green grass ridge trails. There's all those like OG trails that they fish their local Wednesday nighter. It's not like, how do you enforce you're not using it? That's the question I always
Yeah,
had. Is
you
if you get a guy that can use it in one trail, not the other, he's not gonna. Those are precision mounted units. You can't just take it off your boat.
no, you could take the screen off your boat. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's about
you
it.
can't take that transducer off your boat because they require like precision calibration, and especially some of these guys have them on like special arms and stuff like that. So it's like limiting the screen. Okay, that makes sense. Make them take off. You know, they can only have one screen. They still technically could have the live scope hooked to that screen, but
yeah. So somebody says, Romance Got Myth. They said they feel it's a true win. That it's a true win using technology. I think it's going to ruin fishing and should only be in the hands of. I don't know what DEC means for them.
So that is DEC is an acronym for basically conservation. So like your Fish and Wildlife Department.
Gotcha. Okay.
Basically. So it's they're probably from the Northeast because that's what we call it up here.
The DEC.
Yeah, it's Department of Environmental Conservation. It's basically they handle like hunting and fishing.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we just call them game wardens down here.
It's it's just another term. So the thing that what I would like to see, because I'm ignorant to, I honestly up until last year fished with the Garmin Striker 4. Like that's my technology, my guy. Like that's what I got, you know. And it's not even the like, what is it, the Vivid or whatever with the pretty colors. It's literally the OG 2D sonar. That's what I had.
Right.
I bought a bass boat that had a Hummingbird Helix on it, but it doesn't even have GPS and it doesn't have side imaging. So it's a stock DI. You know, I'm just barely learning, you know, like I was joking with Bear Fishing, who was in the chat. I was joking with him earlier. I was like, this is my knowledge of fish finder. See that dot? That's a dot. I don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah, that's like I've got a guy that fishes in the club with us. I was trying to kind of teach him about how to read side imaging versus down imaging versus traditional sonar, 2D versus down imaging, side imaging. He was like, "Man, this is confusing." Dude, if I see a dot, I think it's a fish, but what kind of fish is it? Well, you have
the thing is, dude, I grew up as it has to be an arch because that's what 2D was. There was no dot. It needed to be an arch.
That's right.
And an arch meant fish. So
and the bigger the arch, the bigger the fish.
And that's what it meant. Yeah. And that's what I learned. And growing up, I was a salmon trout fishing. That's what my dad did. We trolled for salmon and trout in deep water. So we're looking for big balls of color for bait with a hole in the middle, which meant that fish were in it eating the bait. And you looked for arches. When you get into down imaging, to be honest, when I watch guys like Tactical Basset and they're like, yeah, see there's a bass on the side imaging. I'm like, what? Like I have an idea and I can kind of tell what a bass looks like on down imaging. But the point I'm trying to make is like, I'm ignorant and I work in tech support. So it's not like I'm a non-technical person. I literally am staring at 4 monitors on a gaming rig that cost me $2,000 to build myself. Like I know technology is just, for me personally, how I like to fish is flipping wood. I like punching mats. I like frog fishing in the mats. I want to be up in it. That's what I want to do. And forward-facing sonar and even down imaging gives me zero advantage in that environment because it really does not shine through grass at all.
Yeah, really down imaging was made for offshore fishing.
It is. It's for
fishing
deeper
points,
water.
Ledges.
The funny part is everybody acts like this is a new technology. It's been out for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
It's just trout and salmon fishermen and offshore guys were using it to locate bait balls and things like that so they can go troll through that. This is something that's been out for a while. It's just not been used. Crappie guys really started bringing it into the bass world.
Right. That's right. I was fixing to say that. It was actually started as a crappie fishing type deal. And then I guess certain bass fishermen got into these electronic companies and said, look, why don't we start putting that on bass boats and let us start using it on bass boats.
Because for crappie, it makes sense, dude. It really does because they school up. It's hard to find them. They move around. They're not an easy. They're actually, honestly, in my opinion, harder to catch than bass. It's just when you find them, you're gonna pull 40 of them, but you gotta find them. So that's where that technology helped those guys. But with the bass fishing, it's become it's funny because it's really become a smallmouth technology too. If you really think about it, you're not forward facing a largemouth because largemouth don't school like that and they don't live in those environments. They will, and you can find them offshore. And I know somebody's going to correct me and say, well, forward facing won the event in Florida. I get it, but it's not a grass technology. It actually is a detriment in the grass. And I actually find when I compete against guys with it on grass lakes, I beat those guys because the one thing I will say, guys that get hooked on it, it's like the guy that always throws a spinnerbait or the guy that always throws a jig. When the conditions don't warrant it, they can't do anything else because that's where their confidence lies. So those guys that use that forward-facing sonar when there's 8 feet of water and 6 feet of grass, they're still trying to use it and they can't. It's not going to be viable for them.
Right.
But at the same time, personally, I've never used it. So I can't speak to its power. And it's funny because I sound negative and positive, but like it's if Lawrence called me tomorrow and said, hey, look, we're going to send you 2 units. We're going to send you the arm. We're going to send you the transducer, and we would like you to use it in your kayak. Am I going to put it on my kayak? Yeah, I am. But that's because it's not banned. If my tournament organization came down and said, look, we're not going to allow it, I'd be like, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on both ends of it because I think that I know we've had people, just to put it in perspective, we had people quit my trail this year because guys were using forward-facing sonar. I feel like they couldn't beat them.
Oh, wow.
So they quit the trail because they felt like they were outmatched.
Yeah.
Because of that.
It's just like when Kayak World went to, okay, you can have motors on your kayak. Is it a kayak then, or is it a boat? But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother night.
It's kind of the same idea though, because if you think about it though, there's a lot of trails. Like Hobie's the only one that I know of that doesn't allow it. And they allow you to use it during free fishing. That you just can't use it when you're fishing tournament.
Right.
So but my trail in Massachusetts, there's guys at XI3s on the kayaks.
Yeah.
They got spot lock on their kayak.
Oh, there's a lot of guys that I fish with a motor. Unfortunately, I did go to a motor. Just because of I can get into big reservoirs, I can fish these rivers around here a lot better.
Now, are you using like a Torpedo, or are you using like?
No, I use a front. I use a bow mount.
Yep.
It's a hand remote.
Yep.
So, but I want to get to little Rich's question here. He says forward-facing sonar is fishing for an 1/8 ounce jig, small plastics. So what about the manufacturers who want to make the spinner baits, crankbaits, and swim baits? They won't sell as many larger lures. No, that they won't, because if you look at forward-facing sonar, was it majority used for schooling fish, locating schools, vertical jigging, that that's drop shot all day long.
To be fair, there's only a couple of companies, just to be devil's advocate on this one, there's only a couple of companies that only make spinner baits. Like everybody else makes everything else. So they're just going to have to come out with a line of drop shot baits or a line of, and honestly, crankbaits, I think you're going to find that there's going to be a new smaller, it's going to be smaller than a 1.5 deep diving. I think you're going to see deep diving crankbaits get smaller because they're going to want to use those to get them out there. Like, because you think about it, if you set that forward facing to 60 feet and there's a school of fish, you cast 80 feet and drag that deep diver through that school, it's going to be an effective technique. So you're going to get some of that. You could do the same thing with a spinner bait. You may see the micro spinner baits. You might see the beetle spin make a comeback, something like that, where you're starting to get those kind of like smaller size baits. But I don't think, honestly, that's the thing. That's actually one of the conversations I had. I was in the chat with Alex's podcast last night, and I was saying, you got to remember that Lowrance isn't just Lowrance. Lowrance is owned by another company that's owned by another company that makes baits, that makes rods, that makes plastics. There's only like 5 or 6 actual companies. If you guys want to go down a rabbit hole, Google Pure Fishing and see what they make.
Well, look at, I think VMC, is it Rapala, Storm? All of them follow the same. It's like one big company with umbrellas off of it.
Yep. Yeah. Look up who Pure Fishing owns. Look up who Johnson Marine owns.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason why your Minn Kota sinks to your Hummingbird. It's not because they're friends. It's because they're owned by the same company. And all these companies that are in cahoots with each other, they all have the same parent.
Lowrance Ghost, isn't the Ghost trolling motor made by Lowrance now? So,
dude, I'm not gonna lie, that's another one. If they want to send Lowrance, if you want to send me a Ghost, I'm looking to upgrade my trolling motor. That thing is freaking cool. But that's the other thing is you're gonna start seeing. I think you're gonna get forward-facing sonar heads and trolling motors. I bet you see that in the next couple of years. You're just gonna start getting ones that already have. I know they have one with like Mega Live Head already. Minn Kota already made one, but you're going to start seeing like all these guys putting their forward-facing sonar transducers right in their trolling motor heads. But I'm waiting for the VR glasses. Like, I'm waiting to be able to put a pair of glasses on and turn my head and it rotates my arm, and I'm wherever I'm looking into the water at the same time.
Well, what lake was that fished for them smallmouth, and they were using them?
Oh, floggers, yeah.
Floggers.
The freaking traffic cone, yeah.
Yeah.
Those things are interesting, the floggers. I mean, and there you go again. That created a whole freaking... I heard about that because I saw it, and it was another one of those. It's the same outrage that they have about forward-facing sonar.
I think
like, should this be legal?
Yeah, I think I saw Jacob Wheeler had it in one hand, had his spinning rod in the other, and he was like this, and he hooked up. He just let it float in the water and reeled the fish up. I'm like,
yeah, they have them tied up paracord to their boat. Yep. So, and now that right there is one thing I will say. Trying to stay somewhat on topic, but off topic a little bit is. I do think that spawn fishing tournaments shouldn't be allowed if you're removing the fish. If you're taking those fish and putting them in your live well and bringing them to a weigh-in, they shouldn't allow spawn fishing because that fish's bed is now dead.
Yeah.
So you've killed 1,000 bass because you weighed that fish. If you want to do an MLF style where you weigh it and throw it back in the lake, fine. But some of these like Bassmasters where they're fishing the spawn, and then granted, I know like a lot of times they're pretty strategic about timing it. So they're hitting the southern lakes, which have already hit spawn before they do it. But as a northern guy, knowing how they hit the St. Lawrence and they hit Champlain, they used to hit Champlain early. And like that kind of stuff bothers me because that forward-facing sonar is going to give them an advantage when they're starting to move in for spawn.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're going to be able to see those schools that are setting up to move in.
That's right. And I think I listened to a podcast the other night, was aquatic biologist Shane. I think he's from Georgia, somewhere in Georgia, like middle Georgia, upper Georgia. And he was talking about that, not to get off subject real quick, but he was talking about riding that fish around in the boat off a spawn for 8 hours and then going to weigh it in, putting it into a catch tank, and then they taking it back out. Now you've ruined that fish's lifespan. And then, the 100,000 eggs that she was going to drop, even 10,000 of them survive and become mature fish. You've killed 90,000 fish.
And that was kind of the point I was trying to bring home is Champlain. So that's a personal one for me because it's 20 minutes that way. They were catching the biggest bags they've caught on Champlain. Was that because of forward-facing sonar, or was it because these guys are getting better? That's the stats I want to see. I don't know. Is it because he's got? It's not like it's Champlain's new. Like I can't. It would be different if it was like, oh, this is only the third time the Bassmasters have been Champlain. Bassmasters has been fishing Champlain since before I was born. So
I would really like to sit down with like Roland Martin, Gary Klein, Hank Parker. So
Klein's still fishing. So
yeah. So him in particular, because he came up through the ranks of when they didn't have forward facing to forward facing.
Yep.
And see what the majority, see if did it take more studying as far as lake breakdown, looking at maps, looking at old, I wouldn't say old footage, but old data that them bass fishermen kept back in the day. They probably got notebooks stuck in their closet or attic.
Guarantee it.
With water temperatures, with coordinates on them. And
they used to, like, I remember back in the day, it used to be like, oh, that old barn and this rock. They would like triangulate instead of doing waypoints. It was always, I mean, I did that when we were kids before my dad had, fancy waypoints on our fish finders. We used to be like, okay, there's a big dock on the shoreline. If you between that dock and that rock, if you go 2.3 miles an hour trolling for salmon, it's the same concept. But they went from that to literally having spot lock and waypoint. They literally just pull up all their waypoints. Yeah. And when they figured out a pattern during practice, they can just push a button and the trolling motor brings them through all of those waypoints. They don't even have to drive their trolling motor anymore. It's automatically navigating them through all those courses. And go right up a bank at the angle they want to go at, and it just brings them right down through there.
I think if you look it up on YouTube, back in 1978-79 era of the Bassmasters, when Ray Scott was just starting all that out, everybody had the same boat.
Yeah.
You wasn't sponsored by a boat company.
No,
Bassmaster actually had the boats, provided the boats with everything equivalent on the boat. And the only thing they had was a flasher.
Dude, those boats too were like John boats.
Yeah.
Those weren't your $150,000 skeeters. No. Those were I think they were what, Crestliner or Lund, or like they were duck boats, essentially. They were just a bigger version of a duck boat. They were like the trackers are now. They were like the hybrid style boat. But yeah, they all had the same boat. That was a different era, to be fair, too, because they were all required to wear suit and tie. And they were like, that was like the good old boy era.
And I like the old, not to get off subject again, Mike, but I like the old jerseys they had. They had button ups, had the pat, like the Sonar patches.
Actually, big bass patch on them. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It's what's crazy about it is the technology. You knew it was going to increase. Like you knew it's going to get that point, but it's funny. That's what makes this topic so polarizing.
Yeah,
is you get guys that are like, "Oh, it's going to ruin my fishery." Well, I can tell you, watching a podcast last night and actually having talked to a few people, and I would love to. And if you guys know of or are familiar with or have contact information for a biologist, send them my way, because I really want to get a biologist on a live stream and be able to quiz them a little bit. Alex had Gene Gilliland on last night, which is Bass's biologist. This dude is a trained biologist, and he's the one that does it for bass. And just to give you perspective, he's got forward-facing sonar on his boat. But they have yet to really determine if it's going to have an effect on the fish in general. Now, in my personal opinion, as a kayak angler and seeing how CPR works, I kind of am a little anti-live well, I will admit. I kind of wish they would go to an MLF where they measure it and throw it back, even if they want to keep it a 5-fish limit, measure it with a Marshall and throw it back in the lake. And then that's going to help with the fish mortality concerns that a lot of people are like, The one that bugs me the most, and this is the conversation that I've heard a lot and I'm seeing in a lot of comments, and I'm going to say right now, and I'm going to take a personal stance, and do not take a shot at Daniel, take a shot at me because I'm the one that's saying it. It's not like it's not like spotlighting deer. It's not the same thing.
No.
People are like, oh, using forward facing is like spotlighting a deer. No, because a deer is literally paralyzed. When you shoot them in the eyes, their brain shuts down, they cannot move, and they get completely locked in place.
Yeah.
The fish can run from that sonar. And I can tell you right now, people don't believe it, and I still have yet to get people to really agree with me. But I can tell you, I've been fishing in my kayak and turned off my fish finder and started catching fish and turned it on and stopped catching fish. They can hear it. They can feel it on their lateral line.
They can feel that ping.
They can run from it. They have the ability to get away from forward-facing sonar, and they're already starting to learn it because I've talked to people that have it that say they have to point it and point it and point it because if they keep that head pointed on those fish, they'll scatter.
Yeah.
So it's not like spotting deer. Like I hate that they make that comparison because first of all, when you catch a fish with forward-facing sonar, you have the ability to put that fish back. When you spotlight a deer, you're not spotlighting a deer for fun. No. You're poaching that animal and killing that animal. So people that make that comparison, that bugs me. Is it an unfair advantage? Does it ruin fishing? That's going to get into the whole purist versus modern versus that's an argument that I can't answer for you because that's your personal opinion. But that argument right there, every time I see that in the comments, I'm like, guys, you're just opening the door for PETA to be like, see, they're disabling the fish and they're harming the fish. And you're creating an environment that's giving ammo to people who don't want fishing to be a thing by saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, talking about the lateral lines on a bass is, you know, every type of, I don't care what type of sonar you use, it puts off a ping. That's the way you receive back the signal on that. Yeah. On that graph. So in traditional sonar don't put as much ping out as a down imaging or a side imaging because it's not receiving as much information back.
Right.
Now forward facing sonar, if it was quiet outside, and I could vouch for this because I've heard it on the boat before.
Flex. Yep.
Yeah, it you can actually turn that thing on sitting there, just pull your trolling motor up, turn the forward-facing sonar on, and you can hear it go tick, 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 tick. Yeah, just like a steady tick.
Yep.
And once you get in the water column, that thing amplifies 10 times.
Yeah. If you don't believe it, go underwater and just snap your fingers.
Yeah.
Put your head underwater, do that. It's loud. Matter of fact, you want to hear something crazy, go underwater and pull a jackhammer by you. You'll go deaf. And that's what the forward-facing sonar is. So it's shooting so many times a second that those fish have to hear that. So, like, they're going to evolve to learn to – now, granted, a fish is not intelligent. We give fish way too much credit for being, like, an intelligent species. But at the end of the day, because they're so unintelligent, it becomes an instinct. When they hear a trolling motor, they know to avoid it. When they hear you stomping around on the deck of your boat, Grandpa used to yell at you because you were being loud and talking when you were fishing, be quiet. They can feel that vibration in the water. They don't necessarily have enough intelligence to go, that is a human and that's going to be a problem for me. It is that noise. The last time I heard that noise, I got a hook in my mouth and I was pulled to the surface. So that's a danger. I need to flee. That's their instinct. So, like, they're going to, no different than when the Whopper Plopper came out, no different than when the chatterbait came out, the Ned rig started becoming popular. When the Ned rig first came out, they were talking about people catching 70 fish in a trip. Now it's just part of your regular arsenal. And the fish are like, I'm not going to bite that because the last time I bit that, I got hooked. Like, they're learning. They just haven't
Yeah.
adapted to it yet. I don't think it's really going to change fun fishing and conservation. I do think that from a tournament standpoint and a competitive nature, the NFL doesn't let someone take steroids because it gives them a performance enhancement.
Right.
They don't let players use, there's literally regulations on the equipment they're allowed to use. I guarantee you there's a lighter pad, there's a lighter shoe that they could use, but they're not allowed. Like, there's always a competitive edge and there's always something that's going to be better. But you have to create some sort of even playing field at some point.
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing, even if they didn't ban it at all, if they held certain tournaments, okay, no forward face on.
Yeah.
And especially these rivers, like the Tennessee River.
Yeah, you don't need it.
You know, all the rivers that they fish, the St. Johns River. I really like to see them two. I like to really see them two events do away with forward facing sonar and actually see how the pros fish the river without that type of advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is it's funny because, like I said, it's one of those, like, we don't have enough data. There's no way to know what the effect's going to be. But at the end of the day, whether they ban it or not is not going to come down to whether I don't like it or you don't like it.
Oh, yeah,
it's not going to come down to whether the professionals like it or not. It's going to come down to, can BASS monetize it and make money from it?
Heck yeah.
Or are they going to lose enough viewership that they're going to lose enough ratings that they're going to have to ban it because they need to continue to keep their ratings up? Because let's be honest, bass fishing and golf, there's a few sports out there that they're not getting NFL numbers.
No.
They're not even getting NASCAR numbers. They're getting limited viewership. And not to toot my own horn, but honestly, the advertising dollars are coming this way. They're coming towards YouTube. They're coming towards content creators. They're not going into live shows. So, you know, if honestly what's going to happen, and I honestly don't think they're going to ban it, and this is why. Because they're going to go, we're considering banning it, right? And Minn Kota and Lowrance are going to call Garmin. They're going to call Bass, and they're going to say, hey, here's $200,000. Don't ban it.
That's right. Or
here's $250,000. Don't ban it. They're not going to, because they're making too much money on it too. So they're going to go, hey, look, you know what? That St. Lawrence event, how about you make it the Lowrance Open? We'll give you $1 million. It's a business, guys. It's going to be something that, but like I said, I'm playing devil's advocate. Do I think that it should be in the opens? No. Let the elites have it. Brand the crap out of it through the elites. Let the opens limit the screens. I love that idea because if you limit the screens and that guy doesn't have to unmount his transducer, he's going to have to make a decision. At that point, he's going to, even if you don't ban forward-facing sonar per se, he's going to make that decision. Do I want to see water temp and what the bottom contour is, or do I want to see what's in front of me? Make him do that, because the ridiculousness of the screens, I will say, looks crazy. Like, it is insane watching these guys with 4 17-inch monitors on their on their deck and then 2 at the console. Like,
yeah, it's, you know, and even in the kayak world, you know, you know, if you look at some of these guys that fish these national trails, and I like Gene, the Fluke Master. He's a Georgia guy. I like watching his content. He's a good fisherman.
I've learned a lot from Fluke Master.
And he runs forward facing sonar and 2 screen. Well,
he's got like a setup, dude. I mean, I talk to Bailey Eichbrett all the time, and he's got Mega Live, and he's got 2, like, his whole left side of his kayak monitors.
Yeah.
I don't even think he could boat a fish on the left side of his kayak because there's so much,
you know. Does it give the real question is, does it give advantage to someone that's using it versus not someone using it? I figured, I've watched a lot of videos on it. I've done a lot of reading on it. Can a person without it go out here and win tournaments? Certainly.
Yep.
If you do your study, if you do your map studies, if you do your pre-fishing, if you know what, if you know what your baits you're going to throw on that certain body of water, you can win it if you find fish.
So here's something that I've thought of, and it's something that has affected my thinking. So one thing I will say, I said earlier, I'm a beat the bank kind of guy. I have a tournament Saturday, right? Middle of the lake, 40 feet of water. Edges of the lake, 12 feet of water. I cross out the middle of the lake. Don't give a shit about any of that portion, right? I fish with 3 or 4 guys before facing Sonar. You know what I know? I know 3 or 4 guys are not going to be on my docks. They're not going to be in my lily pad fields. They're not going to be going up that creek channel because they're using their forward-facing sonar and they're going out deep. So one thing it does do is it splits the field. You get your John Coxes, they're going to go up into the slop and they're going to do their thing, and you're not going to get everybody running that bank now, because half of the field that has the forward-facing sonar is going to go out deep and use it. And the guys that fish shallow, in my opinion, I see even here in Vermont, in a lot of the places that I fish, there's less guys on the bank. I do see a lot of guys standing out in the middle of the lake, video game fishing, that probably would have been right next to me in that slot, because partly, and I'll admit to laziness, I fish the shoreline because I can identify that lay down. I can identify the overhang. I can identify the riprap coming down the bank, the bluff wall. It's easy for me to go, that structure, I'm going to cast to that because of XYZ condition. When I'm in the middle of a lake, if I get into a tournament where I can't catch them on the shore, I'm screwed. I am running around like a chicken with my head cut off, throwing deep divers, throwing liplesses, and I don't drop shot for the life of me because I'm not patient enough. So, like, I have a disadvantage in those types of tournaments. So if it's a body of water that's all deep, forward-facing sonar is going to kick my ass every time. But if it's a body of water that has a diverse set of environment, you're going to get that splits. And honestly, back in the day, there used to be the flippers. And then there was the guys who won out deep and deep cranked, because back then we didn't have a lot of the techniques that are commonplace now. But you had the guys that went out deep and they did deep cranking and deep swim baiting, and they used spinner baits and they were casting them out and letting them sink. There was the deep guys and there was the flipper puncher guys. There was 2 different schools of thought. Now you got a lot more diversity. You have to be more well-rounded to be an elite at this point. If you're going to be at the professional level, you got to be able to do just about every technique, and you got to be able to keep up with the latest trends. But in my personal opinion, I think that there is definitely a distinct advantage in distinct situations that guy with that $3,000 transducer is going to beat the guy with a Humminbird DI with down imaging only.
Right. So Off the Hook Outdoors said some couple things here. He's talking about muskie fishing. I've never muskie fished, but that's a bucket list of mine. He says not fishing dead water. That's exactly right. That's what a lot of the forward-facing guys do on the elites and the Bassmasters and MLF, is they're running this water. If they throw that forward-facing down and scan, in an area, well, the fish have moved, I need to pick up and go. And that's because they're fishing for top dollar and top spots. And when you're fishing for $100,000, you got to do that.
I heard a lot of muskie trails are actually banning forward-facing sonar, which is funny. But dude, muskie is, and that's the thing too, is that's the other thing that's funny is, like, with muskie are aggressive. So if you find them, you can usually get them. But and that's the thing. I will never be up here. My whole premise of my channel is not to tell you what to think. That's not. I started my channel. I was saying to Daniel before we even started the show, I have almost every brand of rod and reel in my kayak rig. I'm not I'm a Daiwa guy. I'm a Lowrance guy. I'm a whatever is on sale at Dick's Sporting Goods guy.
Yeah.
I'm a whatever I can get 50% off on a bargain bin guy. One of my favorite baits that I literally live or die by was a bait I found in a clearance bin and then ended up buying because I had so much success with it. But the fact is, because I do work a 40-hour-a-week job, because I have a career and a family to support, I can't afford a $3,000 transducer and a $2,000 head unit, plus the 40 amp hour, like at least lithium battery to support it all, plus the other, stuff for my GoPros and stuff like that. Like I would need a whole nother battery to run all that stuff just so that I could see fish that are suspended. Like it's what you want to do, but I do think that there is guys that once they learn it, they're going to, it's like anything else. It's like the guy who is a jig fisherman. That guy is going to beat me in an event where the jig is what the bait they want. But the thing about forward-facing sonar is forward-facing sonar turns into a drop shot or any bait. You know where they are. So there's 10 different baits now I can throw because I found them.
Right.
And the dead water thing is a very good point. Like, that's why I don't like offshore fishing. Have I caught fish offshore? Do I do it? Yeah, I'm a tournament angler. If I have to, if I fish all the docks and then I'm like, I got no choice, I'm going to go do it. The one thing I will say is in that event, I'm going to lose to a forward-facing sonar guy because he can spend the first 2 hours just panning that thing around. And he's got a good idea where those fish are, and he can follow them. Because that, with it being live, you can see, oh, they went over here. I don't know where they went. If I cast, I catch a fish, I spook that school. They could have gone left, right, center. I don't know. With that forward-facing sonar, I'm watching them. I watch them depart to the right, turn that. Okay, I got to go over here. Yeah,
it's there's a lot to think about, Mike, and for the whole fishing industry. Like you said, if Lou's contacted me tomorrow and said, "Look, we're going to pay you to be on our pro staff, and we're going to send you 10 rods and 10 reels to use," certainly. But for me to go out and buy nothing but Lou's or Favorite or Okuma or Daiwa or whatever, no, I'm not going to go spend. I'm a working man, so my budget is the budget is the budget level, and that'd be another good topic for a podcast is budget fishing.
Yep. Absolutely.
For people who are just now starting out, or I would call them the avid fisher.
Absolutely.
That can't afford to go to Bass Pro and spend $350 on a rod and reel.
I'll tell you guys right now, the reason I started my channel is because I got into bass fishing. Like I said, I grew up trout salmon fishing. I did trolling. I did the whole offshore trolling for big fish thing. Got into bass fishing because of a camping trip. Whole long story. Moral story is I started doing research. Went to YouTube. That's what you do. You're going to learn a fishing technique, go to YouTube. That's where you learn it.
Yeah.
I discovered tactical bassing. Tactical bassing is like, oh, you got to throw a 16-inch bullworm. Let me tell you, if I throw a fucking 16-inch bullworm, every bass in my lake is going to the other side of the lake because that is not a bait that's going to work. And I'll never forget it. I was watching one of their spring buyer series things, right? And they always talk about, oh, this is a discount. This is a decent, inexpensive combo, right? And they're like a Shimano Corrado with a St. Croix rod is a discount, and it's a good deal. And I'm like, $250 rod and $175 to $200 reel is a deal. I'm like, I've got Abu Garcia Black Maxes on Berkeley Cherrywood rods that cost me $49.99 at Walmart. And the
Yeah.
fact is, at that time, my PB was 5.5 pounds, almost 6 pounds. Like I didn't really weigh it properly. Guess what I caught that on? A freaking Lose Hank Parker edition that I spent $25 at Walmart. Like, I have caught just as many fish on. A matter of fact, I still have the red rod right there leaning at an angle. That's a Berkeley cherrywood rod. Google that. They're $19.99. They're not expensive.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of rods, a lot of reels. And again, on the other end of the spectrum, I just bought a KVD for $140. I buy them all because I like just variety. I like just testing stuff out. But you do not have to buy $500 combos, and you do not have to buy Yamamoto Senkos to catch fish. Yeah. You can catch a bass on a GX2 Ugly Stick for $30 and a night crawler that you picked out of your backyard, and you can catch a 5-pounder on that just as easily as you can catch one on a Daiwa Tatula. It's all about knowing how to fish and where to fish and putting the time on the water. When you put that time on the water, you watch enough YouTube, you learn the techniques, you know what you need to do when you get to the situation that you're in. So yeah, dude, I think that would be an excellent topic is, talking about, because that's my whole channel, man, is just doing it on a budget.
Yeah. And one more question here from on the hook. He's talking about boat position. Yeah. Fishing big lakes and getting on a school of fish and knowing how to position the boat to keep them fish from running off or whatever, swimming off, whatever you want to call it, or avoiding you. It's boat position. And yeah, you got to know how to position your boat. You got to know how to forward face fish, with sonar.
So yeah, no, I agree. It's so for me, that was the hardest thing to learn so I suck at casting to my right. Yeah. Can't do it. I'm right-handed, but I fish with I reel my left hand, and I have a hard time casting to my right because I know that I position myself at a 45-degree angle so that I can make that cast that goes to my right.
Yeah. And
that's the kind of stuff that, like, I could see where forward-facing sonar would help you to know that there's a school of fish over there. So then you need to turn your boat so that you can get to that angle so that you know where the fish are. Whereas, to be honest, when you're offshore fishing, a lot of times you're just blind fan casting until you find a bite.
Till you find a bite, yeah. Unless you're you got forward-facing sonar.
Unless you got forward-facing sonar.
You pinpointed that fish or that school of fish.
Yeah. If you don't know, I mean, that's what I do when I'm off deep, dude. I go left, center, right. Move up, left, center, right. And then, unfortunately, I always forget which one I went when I caught the fish because I get so excited. So then I don't know which direction they came from anyway. Yeah. So then I got to find them again. So,
but yeah, that's my take on forward-facing sonar, Mike. And I know everybody has their own opinion, like anything in the world. But
blow up the comments, guys. Give us your opinions. Tell us what you think. And like I said, here's the thing that, in my personal opinion, is that it is a tool. But when you're talking about $1 million prize, when you're talking about getting into a life-changing group like the elites, because for some of these guys that come up through the opens, they've mortgaged their house, they live on the road, they've sold their soul to the fishing gods for the prayer of getting into a tournament. Maybe they shouldn't have another obstacle thrown in their way, because maybe that is the best. Maybe the next KVD won't be the next KVD because he can't afford a $3,000 transducer because his truck needs a new engine so that he can get to the next event. And once they get to the elite level and they're getting that stuff for free, who cares? Don't care, because they're all going to have it. And to be honest, they all have it. And if they don't have it, it's because they don't want it. Yeah. That's my opinion. If it's a tournament level, then if it's something that you're going to get into a high-end tournament level, like it's entry level, limit the screens. And if it's at the elite level, let them have them.
Yep. So there you have it, folks. Another May Contain Fishing Live podcast with myself and Mike. And just if you have a comment, just leave it. I'll answer it. If you want some more advice on forward-facing sonar, hit up YouTube. There's plenty of it out there. So thank you for another show. Make sure you like, subscribe to our channels. We both have Instagrams. Mike, do you have a Facebook account as well?
I do, actually. Yep. It's all branded. Yep. Being Outdoors across everything.
Okay.
And we're actually going to be porting these guys for those of you who don't have time or don't want to watch it all on video. I was talking to Daniel about this. They do allow us to port this to Spotify. So if you guys want to, I know I personally listen to podcasts while I'm fishing.
Yeah.
It just gives me something to distract me. So I'm going to port the whole video episode, but if you guys have Spotify, we're going to be porting these shows down there as well. I'll actually put information in my videos, and I'll have the information for the next episode of how to locate those if you want to just listen to it in your car on the way up. I know sometimes it's easier to listen to Spotify than to bring up YouTube. We're going to start pouring it down there too, so you guys have another way of listening to it.
Okay. So thank y'all for joining, and join us in 2 weeks for another one.